Hey everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is kind of in reference to minimalism, I suppose, but what it's really about is money. I've made a couple of videos about money on my channel before, but it's not something I discuss too often or in too much detail, at least not yet. But if you're watching this in real time rather than in the future, this is about when most people are getting their tax returns. At least in Canada, and the States is about the same timing, I'm pretty sure. So I figured I would share with you all what I did with my tax return. Now, of course, everybody's financial situation is different, and I was fortunate this year that I actually got a return. I didn't owe anything, which is nice. So while what I did obviously works for me, it may not work for you. And what I'm doing here today is, of course, no judgment on what someone else may choose to do with their own return. It's simply meant to be an idea, what you could consider doing with yours instead. So I sat down and looked at what I was going to be getting back, and I took a small portion, not even a tenth of it, and I set it aside to be kind of a date night fund so that we could go out on a date night and have it not affect our budget at all. So I was really happy with that decision. I also took a small portion of it, screw it, I'll just give you numbers. It's easier than trying to figure out the fractions here. So I took about $100 from my return and I put that into my savings account. And the reason I chose to do that in particular is just because I'm not entirely sure what our financial picture is going to look like once I go on maternity leave. So I wanted to make sure that I gave us just a tiny little bit of extra padding when I can to make sure that we are still comfortable. So if we have planned this out and we were a little bit off, we have that kind of wiggle room. And the rest of my return, I immediately sent to the government to help pay off my student loans. And I realized that that isn't always feasible for everybody, but that is what I chose to do with mine. I'm really focused on trying to get my loan as low as possible and get myself out of debt as fast as possible while still allowing myself to live my life. And I don't want to necessarily postpone things like having children for my loan, but I do want to be smart about how I balance the two. So the goal that I set for myself, and I can talk about this a little bit more in detail in a different video, but I gave myself a goal for how much I wanted to have left by the time I go on maternity leave. And it was a fairly small goal. I think from the time I learned that I was pregnant, I wanted to pay off another like $5,000 in roughly 7.5, 8 months. So I felt that that was very attainable based on the pace that I was paying it off previously. And putting your tax return towards that goal certainly gives you a big boost. I'm already almost there, which is super exciting actually, because it means I'm ahead of schedule in that area, which means I'm going to be paying less interest, and I'm so happy about that. But I'm curious if you're comfortable sharing what you did with your return, if you got one, and what exactly your financial goals are, because I try and keep mine not vague necessarily, but I try not to have too many goals at the same time, because otherwise it can be a little overwhelming. So for me, my first financial goal, first and foremost, is to, while I do utilize a credit card on a very regular basis, is to never actually have an outstanding amount on that card. I use it essentially instead of my debit card because I get cash back, and then I immediately pay it off. So that's always goal number one, is to make sure that I am always smart about how I use my credit card and I never go overboard. And my second goal is to pay off my student loan as fast as possible and save us the trouble of having to pay more interest than we actually need to. Because education is important. Paying the interest isn't. But those are the three things I did with my tax return. I put a little bit aside for a date night. I put a little bit into our savings account, just in case we did our budgeting wrong for while I'm on maternity leave, and then I put everything else towards my student loan. I'd love to hear what you did with yours or what you intend to do with yours once you get it, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys!